The air in the Admiral's office was cold, conditioned to a precise chill that seemed to leach the warmth from skin and bone. It was a sterile cold, the kind found in server rooms and morgues. Lieutenant Commander Michael Thorne stood at parade rest on the deep blue carpet, his gaze fixed on a point just over the Admiral's shoulder. He saw the painting of John Paul Jones, the defiant eyes, the drawn sword. He did not see the man behind the sprawling mahogany desk. Admiral Hayes cleared his throat, the sound unnaturally loud in the pressurized silence. He adjusted a stack of papers, a nervous tic Thorne had never seen in the three-star officer before. "The President has reviewed the after-action report from Operation Serpent's Tooth," Hayes began, his voice a low rumble. "He has also read the citations and the corroborating intelligence. The board's recommendation was unanimous." Thorne remained motionless, a statue in summer whites. His breathing was a slow, measured cadence, a discipline drilled into him over a decade of holding it under water in the thin air of mountain peaks and in the suffocating blackness of a firefight. Hayes leaned forward, his hands clasped on the desk. "Son, the nation, the President, would like to recognize your conspicuous gallantry, your actions above and beyond the call of duty." The Admiral paused, letting the weight of the words settle in the frigid air. "You've been approved for the Medal of Honor." Thorne's eyes did not waver from the painting, the salt spray, the splintered wood, the cannon smoke. He could almost smell it. It was a cleaner smell than the one in his memory. His memory smelled of copper and cordite and hot, wet earth. "No, sir," Thorne said. The two words were not defiant. They were not angry or disrespectful. They were a statement of fact, spoken with the same flat finality as a coroner reading a time of death. Admiral Hayes blinked. He physically recoiled, as if Thorne had thrown a punch. "What did you just say, Lieutenant Commander?" "I must respectfully decline the honor, sir." "Decline?" The Admiral's voice rose, cracking the smooth veneer of command. "You don't decline the Medal of Honor, son. It doesn't work that way." For the first time, Thorne's gaze shifted. It moved from the painting and settled on the Admiral. Hayes felt his breath catch. He had seen that look before, in the eyes of men who had spent too long staring into the abyss. It was an old, tired, and unbreakable look. "There were 7 men on that objective, Admiral," Thorne stated, his voice still quiet, still devoid of emotion. "7? We are aware of the team's sacrifice, Commander. Their awards are being processed, posthumous commendations of the highest order." "They weren't a sacrifice, sir," Thorne corrected him gently. "They were a team. They did their job, every single one of them." He paused, the memory flickering behind his eyes. Rodriguez, checking the charge placement. Miller, calling out enemy positions. Casey, patching up Chen, his hands steady under fire. Davies, the rookie, holding the flank like a veteran. And his team leader, Chief Warrant Officer Mark Atlas Jensen, directing the symphony of violence with 2-word commands. "The medal doesn't belong to me," Thorne finished. Admiral Hayes sank back in his leather chair, his face a mask of disbelief and frustration. He was a man who moved fleets and dictated policy. He was not a man who was told no by a junior officer, no matter how decorated. "This is not a negotiation, Thorne. This is an order. You will accept the award." "With all due respect, Admiral," Thorne said, his posture unchanging. "Which part of my job description requires me to accept a personal commendation for a team action, an action where I was the only one who failed my objective?" "Failed?" You completed the mission. You secured the asset and made it to the exfil point. My objective, sir, Thorne's voice dropped to a near whisper, was to bring my men home. The silence that followed was heavier than before. It was filled with the ghosts of 6 men. Hayes stared at the officer before him. Thorne was not broken. He was something else, something far more difficult to manage. He was resolute. "You're dismissed, Lieutenant Commander," the Admiral said, his voice tight. "We are not done with this conversation." Aye, sir," Thorne said. He executed a crisp about-face and walked out of the office, his footsteps making no sound on the thick carpet. The door clicked shut, leaving Admiral Hayes alone in the cold, quiet room, the unaccepted honor hanging between them like a shroud. Word traveled through the Naval Special Warfare community with the speed of a radio burst. It wasn't official, just whispers in the corridors of the Coronado base, murmurs in the chow hall, and theories floated in the humid air of the Buds training grounds. Thorne declined it. He said no, to the medal. The reactions were a mix of confusion, disbelief, and a quiet, simmering anger. The Medal of Honor was sacrosanct. It was the pinnacle, the recognition of a warrior's ultimate moment. To refuse it felt like a slight, not just to the institution, but to everyone who had ever worn the uniform. "He's got survivor's guilt, Bad," one operator offered, cleaning his rifle. "Seen it before. It twists you up." "Guilt or not, you don't disrespect the honor," another countered. "It's bigger than him. It's for the guys we lost, too." Thorne felt their eyes on him. As he walked across the grinder, the familiar expanse of asphalt where so much sweat and pain were consecrated, the chatter would die down. Men would nod, their expressions unreadable. They gave him space. It wasn't the respectful space given to a hero. It was the careful distance one gives to a live grenade. He was an outsider now, more than ever. The sole survivor, the man who refused the medal, the ghost of Alpha Platoon. His routine became his sanctuary. Before the sun bled over the Pacific, he was in the water. He swam for miles, his strokes powerful and relentless, pushing his body until the burning in his lungs drowned out the voices in his head, the voices of his men. He'd hit the gym next, the clang of iron a rhythmic punishment. He'd run the beaches until his legs screamed, each footfall on the wet sand a penance. He was a machine of disciplined grief, channeling his turmoil into physical exhaustion. His commanding officer, Captain Wallace, watched from a distance. Wallace was a frogman of the old school, a man who had seen the teams evolve from the jungles of Southeast Asia to the deserts of the Middle East. He knew the cost. Wallace called Admiral Hayes. "He's not being insubordinate, sir," Wallace said into the phone, his voice firm. "He's being a team leader." "He's being an obstructionist, Frank," Hayes retorted, his frustration evident even over the secure line. "The White House is asking for a date. The press is sniffing around. This makes us all look foolish." "With respect, sir, forcing him to accept it will only break him. This isn't about PR. This is about a man's soul." "His soul? His soul was forged in the same fire as yours and mine. He's a SEAL. He follows orders." "He's trying to give the orders, sir," Wallace said quietly. "He's telling us what's right. Maybe we should listen." The line went silent for a moment. "Get him in line, Captain," Hayes finally said. "That's an order." The call ended. Wallace sighed, looking out his window at the distant figure of Thorne running along the surf, a lonely silhouette against the dawn. The pressure campaign began subtly. Thorne was assigned to curriculum review, a tedious desk job meant to bore him into compliance. He completed the work with meticulous, infuriating efficiency. He was asked to speak to Buddhist classes, to inspire the new generation. He stood before them, his eyes sweeping over their hopeful, terrified faces. "Your weapon is your buddy," Thorne told them, his voice calm. "Your buddy is your weapon. You are nothing alone. If you leave this place with only one lesson, let it be that. The man to your left and your right is more important than you are. Never forget it." He never mentioned heroism. He never mentioned medals. He spoke only of the team. The instructors reported that the trainees were more focused, more unified than ever. Admiral Hayes escalated. He summoned Thorne again. This time the office felt even colder. "I've read your after-action report again, Commander," Hayes said, tapping the thick document. "It's detailed, but you've minimized your own actions to an almost criminal degree. You credit Rodriguez with neutralizing the high-value target. The drone footage suggests you were the one who took the shot. Petty Officer Rodriguez identified the target and confirmed the visual ID, sir. My shot was just the period at the end of his sentence. You credit Chief Miller with holding off the enemy counter-assault single-handedly while the team moved to the secondary structure. He drew their fire, sir. That is not an exaggeration. He became the sole focus of their rage. It's the only reason the rest of us made it across the courtyard." Thorne's voice was still flat, but a muscle twitched in his jaw. "And your wound?" Hayes pressed. "You failed to mention that you took shrapnel to the leg. You cauterized it yourself with a heated blade and continued to lead the extraction for another 5 clicks. It was a minor injury, sir. Petty Officer Casey had the medical supplies, and he talked me through it before he—" Thorne's voice hitched for a fraction of a second, an almost imperceptible crack in the ice. Before he was engaged. Hayes saw the opening. He leaned in. "Mike, the team is gone. You are what's left. This medal isn't just for you. It's a testament to them. It tells the world what Alpha Platoon was made of." "Then give them the testament, sir," Thorne replied, his control returning. "Give them the medals. All of them. Give them the honor they earned." "We are. They're all receiving the Navy Cross. It's a tremendous honor." "It's not the same, sir, and you and I both know it. The world will hear about the one Medal of Honor winner, the lone survivor, the hero. They'll read the other names as a footnote." Thorne's voice finally took on a sharp edge. "Their sacrifice will not be a footnote, Admiral, not while I'm still breathing." Hayes was stunned by the fire in Thorne's eyes. This wasn't guilt. This was a righteous, unyielding loyalty that transcended death. He was a shepherd who had lost his flock, and he would not allow the wolves to praise him for returning alone. "There's no precedent, Thorne. We can't award the Medal of Honor posthumously to an entire team when the citation is for a single, living individual's actions." "Then change the precedent, sir." Captain Wallace, sensing the escalating conflict, decided on a different approach. He found Thorne in the armory, stripping down a Sig Sauer with the focused calm of a watchmaker. "Mike," he said, leaning against a weapon rack, "I'm not here to give you an order." Thorne didn't look up, his hands moving with practiced economy. "Appreciate that, Captain. I read your AAR, and I read the intel from the drone feed. And I read the transcripts from the comms." Wallace paused. "You're leaving things out." Thorne stopped, his hands hovering over the disassembled pistol. He slowly raised his head. The official report says you were separated from Chief Jensen during the final exfiltration, that he was KIA holding the ridge while you extracted the asset. Thorne's knuckles were white where he gripped the slide of the pistol. "That's not the whole story, is it?" Wallace asked gently. Thorne was silent for a long time. The only sound was the hum of the ventilation system. "We were both hit," Thorne said, his voice raspy. "Same RPG burst. I was luckier. His wounds were bad, real bad." He looked down at the pieces of the gun, but he was seeing the blood-soaked dirt of a foreign mountain. He couldn't move. The QRF was closing in. We had maybe 2 minutes. He still had the satchel with the high-value target's laptop. The primary objective. Wallace waited, not breathing. "He gave me his morphine," Thorne continued. "Told me to use it, that my leg would slow me down. Then he gave me the satchel. His last order was, 'Get it home, Mikey. Just get it home.'" Tears welled in Thorne's eyes, but they did not fall. They were prisoners, just like him. I argued, told him we'd go together. He just smiled, put his rifle to his shoulder, said he'd provide a warm welcome for the reception committee. He told me he was proud of me. Thorne's voice broke. He started firing, drew them all to his position. I could hear their screams, his screams. "I ran, Captain. I followed my orders, and I ran." He finally looked at Wallace, his face a portrait of anguish. "He gave me the objective. He gave me his painkiller. He gave me his life. And they want to give me his medal? No, sir, absolutely not." Wallace now understood. It was not survivor's guilt. It was a debt, an impossible, sacred debt. And Thorne was determined to honor it, even if it cost him his career. "Okay, Mike," Wallace said, his own voice thick with emotion. "Okay, I get it." But Admiral Hayes did not get it. He saw only protocol and politics. He devised what he believed was a masterstroke, a final public gauntlet Thorne could not possibly refuse. He arranged a private meeting. Thorne was summoned to a conference room at a hotel near the base. When he walked in, his blood ran cold. Seated around a large table were the families of his fallen men. Mark Jensen's widow, Sarah, her face pale and drawn. Petty Officer Rodriguez's father, a stern, proud man in a threadbare suit. Chief Miller's parents, clutching each other's hands. Casey's young wife, holding a photograph of her husband. Chen's brother, and Davies's mother, her eyes red-rimmed and lost. Admiral Hayes stood at the head of the table, his expression a mixture of sympathy and tactical certainty. This was his checkmate. "Lieutenant Commander Thorne," Hayes began softly, "the families wanted to speak with you. They want to tell you how proud they are, how much this medal, your medal, means to them." Thorne felt a hot spike of fury, a rage so pure and white-hot it almost made him dizzy. Hayes was using them. He was using their grief as a weapon against him. He looked at their faces. He saw their pain, their confusion, their desperate need for meaning. And his anger vanished, replaced by an overwhelming wave of responsibility. He had failed to bring their men home. He would not fail them now. He pulled a chair to the center of the room, turning his back on Admiral Hayes. He faced the families. "My name is Mike Thorne," he began, his voice quiet but clear. "I was your husband's, your son's, your brother's teammate. I am not here to talk about a medal. I am here to tell you what they did." He started with the insertion, his voice steady, painting a picture of the moonless night, the cold water, the silent approach. He spoke of each man's role, their calm professionalism, their easy banter in the face of mortal danger. He looked at Mr. Rodriguez. "Sir, your son, David, was a genius. He saw things nobody else did. When we got to the target building, the intel was wrong. The plans were bad. The HVT wasn't where they told us. Everyone was ready to pull back. But David, he saw a flicker of light, a reflection in a window 3 buildings over. He said, 'He's there. I know he's there.' He was right. He saved the mission before it even started." Mr. Rodriguez's stern facade began to crumble. A tear traced a line through the weathered landscape of his cheek. Thorne turned to Chief Miller's parents. "Your son, Sam, was the bravest man I have ever known. When we were compromised, they threw everything at us. It was a storm of fire. We were pinned down in a courtyard, no cover. Sam, without an order, ran to a broken wall and laid down a wall of lead. He drew every ounce of their attention. He was laughing, can you believe it? Shouting at them. He gave us the 30 seconds we needed to live. He saved us all." He then faced Casey's wife, his voice softening. "Jenny, your husband, Liam, was a magician. I took shrapnel in my leg. It was bad. I thought I was done. He crawled to me under fire, and he was as calm as if we were back in the barracks. He talked me through patching myself up. He told me jokes. He said, 'Don't worry, Commander, the scar will look great. Chicks dig scars.' He was hit while he was saving me. He died saving me." He went on, man by man. He spoke of Chen's quiet courage, of young Davies finding the heart of a lion on his first and last op. The room was utterly silent, save for the soft sounds of weeping. It was not the sound of despair, but of catharsis. Thorne was giving them a gift more precious than any medal. He was giving them the truth. He was giving them their men back for a few brief, glorious moments. Finally, he looked at Sarah Jensen, his team leader's wife. His voice was thick with a pain that was almost physical. "Mark, Atlas, he was the heart. He held us all together. At the end, on the ridge, it was just us. We were both hit. He made the call. He knew only one of us could make it out with the intel. He gave me his pack, he gave me his orders, and he told me to tell you. He told me to tell you that he loved you more than the sky." Thorne's composure finally broke. A single tear escaped and traced a path down his cheek. He did not wipe it away. "Yes, he saved me," Thorne whispered, his voice raw. "They all saved me. Everything I did standing on their shoulders. The medal, the honor, it belongs to them. It was purchased with their lives. How can I possibly wear it? How can I accept a prize for being the one who was left behind?" Stunned silence filled the room. Admiral Hayes stood frozen, his brilliant tactical move having blown up in his face. He had brought the families to pressure a soldier, and instead the soldier had given them a eulogy so powerful, so honest, that it sanctified the very air they breathed. Mark Jensen's father, a retired Master Chief Petty Officer himself, stood up. He was a hard-weathered man with eyes that had seen Engihov's own share of war. He walked over and stood in front of Thorne. "You did not fail them, son," the old Master Chief said, his voice a low gravel. "You honored them. You're still honoring them. My boy, Mark," he always said, "a team leader eats last. Looks like he taught you that lesson well." He turned to face Admiral Hayes, his eyes blazing. "Admiral, this man is doing his duty. He's looking after his team. That's the highest calling there is. You're trying to give him a medal, but he is trying to deliver justice. If you can't see the difference, then you have no business wearing that uniform." The room was electric. The families, one by one, stood up. Sarah Jensen walked to Thorne and gently placed a hand on his shoulder. "He's right, Mike," she said softly. "Mark wouldn't want it. Not like this. Admiral Hayes looked at the united front of the grieving families and the unbending lieutenant commander. He saw the truth, finally. He had been looking at the situation through the lens of protocol and prestige. He had been trying to close a file. Thorne was trying to close a wound. Hayes, for the first time in his career, felt truly and utterly defeated. And in that defeat, he found a sliver of understanding. He had been wrong, completely and profoundly wrong. He nodded slowly, a gesture of surrender. I understand," he said, his voice barely audible. "I will make a call." Captain Wallace had already made his own call. He had bypassed the chain of command, a potentially career-ending move. He had gotten a message to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Admiral Thompson, a man known for his wisdom and his deep respect for the warriors on the ground. Wallace had sent Thompson a simple package, a copy of Thorne's after-action report, a transcript of the comms from Operation Serpent's Tooth, and a one-page summary of Thorne's refusal, ending with Master Chief Jensen's father's words. Admiral Thompson read it in his office at the Pentagon. He read it twice. He then canceled his next 3 meetings and summoned Admiral Hayes. Hayes arrived, Projetos his face grim. He expected a reprimand for losing control of the situation. "Report, Admiral," Thompson said, his voice calm but carrying the unmistakable weight of 4 stars. Hayes recounted the events, culminating in the disastrous meeting with the families. He did not spare himself. He admitted his error in judgment, his failure to understand Thorne's motivation. "You saw a problem with military honors protocol, Hayes," Thompson said, his eyes cold. "You should have seen a man upholding the highest honor of the SEAL teams. I will never leave a fallen comrade." Thompson stood and walked to the window, looking out over the Potomac. He feels he left 6 of them. His logic is that his life is the only thing he has left to honor them with. By refusing a personal award, he is laying his own reputation on the altar of their memory. He is, in his own way, still on that ridge, covering their 6. Hayes stood silently, the rebuke washing over him. "You nearly broke one of our finest operators because you were worried about a schedule and a press release," Thompson continued, turning back to face him. "Your handling of this has been unacceptable. You forgot that our greatest asset isn't our ships or our planes. It's our people, and you treated this man, this warrior, like a piece of administrative hardware." The consequences for Hayes were not public. He was not demoted or reassigned. He was ordered by Thompson to personally oversee the solution, to fix the mess he had made. It was a far more humbling punishment, forcing him to champion the very cause he had fought against. A new plan was drafted, one without precedent. It was sent loose to the Secretary of the Navy, then to the Secretary of Defense, and finally to the President's desk. It was unorthodox, radical, and utterly right. It was approved in less than an hour. The ceremony was held on a flawless sunny day at Naval Amphibious Base Coronado. The sky was a brilliant cloudless blue. A large stage was set up on the grinder, the sacred asphalt now covered in ceremonial bunting. 7 chairs were placed rupas the stage. 6 of them were empty. In the front row sat the families. Their tears still flowed, but today they were mingled with a quiet, fierce pride. Behind them sat hundreds of SEALs, a sea of dress whites. Their faces stoic and respectful. They understood now. They all understood. Admiral Hayes, his voice humbled, read the citations first. He read the citation for the Navy Cross, awarded posthumously to Chief Warrant Officer Mark Atlas Jensen, for his extraordinary heroism and leadership. Sarah Jensen, escorted by her father-in-law, a Master Chief, accepted the medal. He read the citation for the Navy Cross, awarded posthumously to Chief Petty Officer Samuel Miller. His elderly parents walked Commerciers the stage, holding each other, and accepted the medal. He read the citations for Rodriguez, for Casey, for Chen, for Davies. Each name, each story of valor, was met with a respectful, profound silence from the crowd. The families accepted the medals, not as tokens of loss, but as affirmations of lives lived with immense purpose. Finally, Admiral Hayes turned to the last man. The President of the United States takes pleasure in presenting the Medal of Honor to Lieutenant Commander Michael Thorne, United States Navy, for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty. The citation was long. It detailed Thorne's every action, but it was rephrased. It spoke of how he executed the plan formulated by Rodriguez, how he was enabled by the sacrifice of Miller, how he was guided by the medical expertise of Casey, how he was inspired by the final stand of Jensen. It wove the actions of the entire team into the fabric of his own. The President of the United States stood and walked to Thorne. He held the blue-ribboned medal, its five-pointed star gleaming in the California sun. Thorne stood ramrod straight, his eyes fixed forward. The President did not place the medal around Thorne's neck. Instead, he leaned in and spoke softly, for Thorne alone to hear. "Son, your country is proud of you, and your team would be too." The President then turned. He walked to the 6 empty chairs, each one bearing a nameplate and a folded American flag. He paused, then gently laid the Medal of Honor case on the seat of the center chair, the one belonging to CWO Mark Atlas Jensen. A collective gasp went through the crowd, followed by a wave of overwhelming emotion. It was not Thorne's medal. It was Alpha Platoon's. He was just the custodian. The President returned to the podium. "Lieutenant Commander Thorne has accepted this medal," the President announced, his voice ringing with authority. "On behalf of the entirety of SEAL Team 3, Alpha Platoon, let this day be a reminder. A hero does not stand alone. They are lifted up by the courage and sacrifice of their team." Thorne, for the first time, turned and faced the families. He gave them a slow, deliberate nod. It was a nod of shared understanding, of a promise kept. Sarah Jensen met his gaze, and for the first time since she received the news, she smiled. It was a watery, fragile smile, but it was a smile nonetheless. The ceremony concluded. The crowd dispersed. The sailors, once confused and judgmental, now looked at Thorne with a reverence that surpassed any they would have given a mere hero. He had done something harder than earning the medal. He had defined its true meaning. Later that evening, as the sun set, Thorne walked alone to the Naval Special Warfare Memorial. It was a quiet, solemn place, with a wall of black granite bearing the names of the fallen. 6 new names had been etched into the stone that morning: Jensen, Mark A. Miller, Samuel T. Rodriguez, David R. Casey, Liam P. Chen, Gian L. Davies, Benjamin C. Thorne reached out and traced each name with his fingers, the cold stone of final, unyielding reality. He took the Medal of Honor from its case. He didn't look at it. He looked at the names. "I got it home, Atlas," he whispered to the stone, his voice thick. "I got it home." He gently placed the open case at the base of the memorial, right below the 6 names. The medal, with its iconic blue ribbon, rested there, a shared tribute. He was no longer the sole survivor, burdened and alone. He was a guardian of their memory, a living testament to their brotherhood. The weight was still there. It would always be there. But now it was a shared weight, a sacred trust. And in that he finally found a measure of peace. He had not left his comrades behind. He had brought their honor home.